Well, hello everybody. I'm Matthew Stibber from Articulate Marketing, and I'm here again with Harry and David from Chalkline, Boreham Wood's finest IT support company. And we have a special guest, Mike from Wavenet, and we're here to talk about Microsoft Teams and how to get the most out of it and how to integrate it with the real-world telephone system. If you have any questions as we go through, we're going to try and make time at the end for actual questions and responding to them live. Put them into the Q&A window in the side of Teams here, and we'll get to those questions as we go. But first, I would like very much to introduce Mike from Wavenet, and he is going to run through a short presentation about Wavenet and its integration with Teams and how you can connect up Teams to phone systems. So, Mike, I'm going to share your presentation, and I'm going to hand over to you now.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, David. Appreciate it. Hi everyone. So as mentioned, my name is Mike Korkidakis and I am the channel manager here at Wavenet. So my role within the Wavenet community is to obviously work with partners like Chalkline and enabling and supporting them on the Teams telephony side. So my personal background, I have about 14 to 15 years in the industry, and that's predominantly through unified communications and through 3 countries actually. So that's working for various tier 1 providers with a particular specialty in the most recent years in the Microsoft community and Microsoft telephony. So I want to cover off a few things today. One of the first things we're going to start with is just some of the sort of landscapes of the current sort of workforce and what we're seeing out there in terms of challenges. And then I'll quickly sort of touch on the actual Teams Link product and the integration of Teams Link telephony into Microsoft Teams. Do a quick demonstration of the portal just to highlight some of the sort of the key features, and then we can open things up for a discussion. So as mentioned, one of the first things we just wanted to sort of cover off is just sort of a few basic sort of statistics and things that we're seeing out in the modern world. And the reason for this is because what we want to do is sort of highlight how this product can sort of help either overcome some of the challenges or support some of the challenges and ensure that you can collaboratively communicate effectively. So some of the challenges we're seeing in the modern workforce now and the sort of the landscape is just 45% of the modern workplace users use social tools for work. And what we are seeing is 4 times as many devices per user. Obviously, technology's massively come along there. We are seeing 5 generations in today's workforce. And as they do say, this is a Microsoft statistic, they do say 72% of the relevant workforce will be remote by 2020. Obviously, given the situation we're in now, we've seen that dramatically accelerate. And realistically, that stat right now is probably higher than that. We are seeing 2 times as many teams that exist in the modern workforce, which is why products like Teams are so imperative. And some of the Microsoft Teams stats we have very quickly accelerated and seen that sort of now jump over 75 million daily active users, and many features already included as part of your Microsoft Office 365 subscription. That's a little bit of a touch on the sort of the landscape. Some of the challenges we're seeing in the modern remote workforce today is, people want a more fluid work environment. We obviously are seeing millennials, different generations, that value sort of that continued learning, the flexibility, empowerment and collaboration over pay. So there's certain benefits that people look for rather than just financial compensation. As I already mentioned, we're seeing a huge demand and a requirement for remote working, especially given the current times. People want to be able to prevent data loss and ensure information is never compromised. Keep teams that are remote informed and engaged, provide information faster, satisfy the modern demand for instant customer service, and know when and how to embrace change. So, as I mentioned, one of the things we want to sort of cover off is how these products can help overcome some of those challenges. So Teams, what we like to say in the Teams world with products like Teams is it's what's called a presence-based product, which helps make communication more efficient. The nice thing about a presence-based product is exactly that. You can see people's availability, you can see people's location. But what it enables you to do is find the most effective way to communicate with those individuals. Previously, before presence-based products, you're kind of blindly calling or blindly emailing somebody, and that's not always the most effective way. With a presence-based product, you can see if somebody's in a meeting, you can see if somebody's on a call, you can choose to instant message them, you can choose to bring them into a conference call, have a face-to-face call, email them. There's all various different tools that you can use in forms of communication for people, and it enables that to be more productive. Simple as that, really. You can find the most effective way to communicate with people. You can also translate this presence to be used with external contacts. So that's one of the nice things. You can extend Teams and the internal collaboration, say, with the external community as well. So, customers, suppliers, whatever it's going to be, you can see other people's availability, and you can extend that same collaboration with those external parties as well. This again just touches on the collaboration piece. With Teams as a base product, you have the entire capabilities within the product to do things like share files within channels, view, edit, and collaborate on your Office documents from within Teams, real-time co-authoring capabilities for your key Microsoft products, your Word, your Excel, your PowerPoint. Multiple channels can be added to each team, effectively enabling you to communicate on relevant topics within each channel. You can integrate with tabs, connectors, and bots to assist with your processes. There's all various different types of apps and applications and bot integration within Team that will substantially help increase all various different interactions. And the guys at obviously Chalkline specialize in those sorts of things, so they can always help you with setting it up. So one of the things we're seeing as well is just wanted to highlight that deploying presence-based products like this as well, you are seeing some financial benefits to it as well. So the services that you're kind of seeing in those financial benefits is you are seeing, limited to no upfront expenses now, and that's been massively key with deploying in the current situation we are. Obviously, we've seen our services accelerate massively because there's a huge need for it. You do reduce those operating costs. It's a smarter use of staff resources. It's scalable. It can scale up and down with your business very instantaneously. I'll touch on some of that when I move to the portal. You do have an enhanced security within the Microsoft ecosystem and environment, and it is, essentially a pay-as-you-go product. So you do see some key financial benefits to deploying products such as this as well. So what I just want to touch on quickly is essentially what is Teams Link. So Teams Link is taking your standard Teams telephony products. So for anybody that's using Microsoft Teams, a key thing to note is we're not making any changes to that client. You'll get a call tab on your Teams client. Your Microsoft tenancy stays the exact same. There's no changes on that side. All we're enabling you to do is the ability to call outside of Teams, and everything we do is in the back end on the administration side. So we're enabling some enterprise level functionality within the Teams space, things that just can't be done with just the Microsoft out of the box product, right? So we're enabling that external voice calling from within Microsoft Teams securely and efficiently. So you'll be able to make and receive UK, international, and mobile calls with cost-effective calling bundles. So our Teams-based product is a fully cloud-based solution, so there's no need for any infrastructure on site, which makes it very, very easy and very quick to deploy. You're just relying on your standard connectivity that goes into your organization, and for most people, the bandwidth is more than substantial and sufficient. So we have obviously partnered with Microsoft to create this platform. Some of the features, it is a Microsoft approved solution. We do use Microsoft certified hardware and SBCs. The nice thing is it's a simple price per user model with unlimited UK minutes, or obviously we do have a global presence as well, which I'll touch on in a moment. No on-site hardware is required. And obviously, we can do things like, port in your numbers and support all of that as well. So before I sort of just dive into the portal and just highlight some of the sort of key telephony features, I also just wanted to just give a really quick synopsis of sort of how our product differs to the Microsoft Direct, small business voice or enterprise level voice product within the Teams telephony space. So just as a simple kind of cost per user comparison, our product does have inclusive UK minutes, that's unlimited domestic minutes versus Microsoft's 1200. There's 600 minutes per user on the international side. You can see that there's a primary amount of similarities as you go down here. One of the big ones for us, though, is we are a global numbering provider. So we can provide local numbers in 127 countries versus Microsoft's 12. A lot of standard features here that are all the same, but this is where you start to touch on some of our differences which, like I said, are kind of those enterprise level functionality. So things like group voicemail, we do have group voicemail in the product. So instead of a call route or a call queue terminating on an individual voicemail, you can set that to a group voicemail, meaning everybody in that group gets an email and gets a notification that there's a voicemail left. So you're just not missing anything. It makes things very efficient. Advanced disaster recovery and a visual call routing manager. I'll touch on the visual call routing manager in the portal in a moment. Advanced disaster recovery is a big one. So our Teams Link product is what's called a multi-tenant product. It means that we host that in our own data centers, but what we really do have is what's called aggregated SIP channels across multiple providers. Deploying with Microsoft directly is heavily reliant on one particular carrier within the UK. Because we've built the platform and the infrastructure the way we have, we've partnered, as an example, within the UK, 9 major carriers. So if one of those carriers does have, an incident where something goes out, you look at, certain outages that happened at the end of last year for some of the major carriers, our solution was not impacted by that because we can instantly route and change where we want and what providers we want our call traffic routed over. And that's an absolute huge one. That's why partners like Chalkline, heavily rely on our product and our solution because of the stability that's there on the back end. We do, and it is actually fully live now, we do offer full FCA and MiFID II compliant call recording into the Teams product. That's not something Microsoft do. That's not really a space they want to play in. They leave that to telephony experts like ourselves, and that's a key differentiator as well. So if you are one of those organizations that, number one, you might actually just want calls recorded just for your own sort of internal HR training purposes or GDPR compliance or what have you, or if you actually need to be fully FCA or MiFID II compliant, we can support you on that. And that's capturing your internal Teams traffic, anything that's external out of a mobile application, as an example. It's capturing everything, instant messages and all external call traffic. So that's all captured for you. As well as some of the advanced features we have in the Pro product is things like skill-based routing, which I'll touch on in a moment, as well as we do have some advanced reporting, a supervisor dashboard, and a contact center wallboard. So for any of those organizations that have any sort of contact center level requirements, we do have some of those features. I don't want to go too in depth in the portal today. I just wanted to sort of highlight some of those key differences. So I'm just going to pull the portal across now and just give everybody a quick synopsis of some of the things that I mentioned there and how this works. So as I mentioned, everything you're seeing now is all in the back end. All your end users are going to be using is the actual Teams client itself. There's a call tab enabled in the Teams client. They can, there's a dial pad to make external calls. They can use hardware if they want, headsets like I'm using now. Nothing changes in that regard. Your Microsoft sign-in details and your tenancy all stays the same. Everything we're doing is in the back end. So what you can see on the portal initially from a quick sort of snapshot is you will get a tally of any call charges if you're making any sort of above those international minutes included or any premium rate calls. A big one that you do have here is you can check the operational health of the system. So like I said, we do have a global presence. And the reason we have a global presence is not just for redundancy, but it's also to prevent what's called latency. So we have breakout points in other parts of the world, like America, Australia, because if you had a user in Australia, as an example, what you don't want is those calls routing back to the UK, breaking out from the UK and then forward to Australia, because you do get what's called latency and some delays on the calls. So you can see from the portal just sort of the global health of the solution and just any incidents that are live. So you do get a full and functional view of everything that's taken place. Just running you through some of the very, very basic and quick sort of back-end features. You do get a setup tab, and this setup tab has all the things that you'd expect to see in a telephony solution. So where our product has a lot of benefits, and again, why partners like Chalkline like using us, is because it's just simplicity and ease of use. So you have the ability to control a lot of the phone system features, and to some people, this can be a little bit more complex in the Microsoft environment, whereas in our environment, it's very user-friendly and very easy. You can do things like set block callers, set a dial policy as an example. So if you want to block certain activity and certain locations being called, you can do that from the setup tab. You have the ability to, set up your group voicemails, manage any media. So anything you want to store for your IVRs, your auto attendants, your voicemails, all that can be uploaded into the portal very simplistically and very easily. You can view all your users, all your external numbers. You can do things like create a user very simply. So you can set up an Active Directory sync, meaning when a user is created in your Office 365 tenancy, it does pull across to the portal, or you can simply just instantly create a user, type in their name, selecting the domain so the portal can manage multiple domains, select the license that you want for that user, select the telephone number from your available range, and you can simply just manually create a user. And once you click create, it does assign that user that phone number. The dial pad will appear in their Teams client, and you can scale up and have users ready to go to make calls on Teams instantaneously. So it's very, very simplistic and very, very easy to use. One of the big things I mentioned before is we do have a visual call routing manager. What that is for anybody that has ever seen this in the Microsoft environment, it's a little bit complex and a little bit difficult to set up. In our world, it's very easy. It's very easy and very visual. You can see that even the most sort of untechnical of people can get a basic understanding of how you set up your call routing templates. This is your main number. If someone calls that in hours, it routes here, which is a main menu IVR, and so on and so forth. It's very, very easy and very simplistic to sort of set up, and it's a click-through process that you can very easily set up yourselves. So there's not any complexities there, and very, very simple. A lot of customers also like this because this is where you can do your setup of things like disaster recovery templates. That's another big difference to the product here, is you could set, if an office needed to be evacuated, or, if one particular office went down, what's your disaster recovery model? You can set various templates for public holidays, for disaster recovery, and it's there and it's instantaneous. And the minute you bring one of these call routes live, it's an instant and immediate change. So it brings everything live. And it is as simple as, if I just go to creating a call route, it's a very simple click-through process. You select a DDI and you just start clicking through. Now, as I mentioned, I'm just breezing through this, but I wanted to highlight certain things that are different from our product to the Microsoft product out of the box. So with the Microsoft product, you can have what's called a ring group attached to a number. What a ring group allows you to do is just essentially this. You can set a ring time, which is a matter of seconds. And that means if someone called this number, it's going to ring to everybody that's sitting in that ring group currently. That just rings everybody at the same time. Whoever picks up the phone, they're the first person that connects the call. What a lot of organizations like, and some organizations require, Chalkline use this themselves, is a call queue functionality. And this is something that's available in our product. What this enables you to do is what's called skill-based routing. So on that previous document that I highlighted, that's something that existed in that document, and that's something that's unique to our product. What this enables you to do is to set skill levels for particular agents. You can rank people from 0 to 100. The higher the skill level, those users will take those calls first. So it'll ring through those users first before it works its way sequentially down. And if you have a whole bunch of users on the same skill level, it rings to the person that's been most idle the longest. And that's a real big differentiator in our product. That's slightly different. Just quickly moving on as well. You do have the ability to run various live reports out of the portal, which will just pull up instant live data. A lot of organizations need to do reporting. We do have some advanced reporting built into Microsoft Power BI product as well. But essentially, just to touch on that point, it's essentially, anything that you need to export out of the system in terms of detail and levels of detail, we can help you with and provide you with. There is some basic contact center functionality, which does do some things like integration with some of the major CRMs that exist. So you can have things like screen popping when of a client's record. So, whatever information stored in your CRM, when an incoming call's coming in, you can actually have that level of detail pop up. So, and you can prepare for the call. You do get things like supervisor dashboards. If you do need to manage call queues that are coming in and manage particular agents, your supervisors can do this by seeing what active calls are in the queues, what's happening, what agent it's routing to. You have a little bit of capabilities to sort of set busy and stop breaks for agents, as well as having things like live and active wallboards. So this is all stuff that, like I said, is unique to our product. It's not covered off in the Microsoft based product, and this is essentially why we exist and why we do what we do. So hopefully that covered off some of the big sort of key points in the telephony side. If I just continue to sort of move on just quite quickly. Also, as I mentioned, there's a whole various element of different devices that work with Microsoft Teams. There's some native handsets, some headsets, some conference room solutions. So all those things exist in the product, and we can support you with all of those. So every particular user that is using the Teams client can be signed into what's called 8 instances of the application at once. So, you know, if you're a particular user or a remote user, you can be signed in on a laptop using a headset. You can have a desk phone, a mobile device, an iPad, what have you. So you have that flexibility across all various different devices as well within the products. Should I cover project management, guys, or did you want to sort of?
I think, given the timelines, I'd like to sort of move on to a bit more of a discussion, if that's okay, but maybe we can touch on project management with David and Harry.
Yeah, perfect.
So, thank you. That was very interesting. And I'm right in thinking, Mike, that you can, as well as having desktop phones and things like that, you can actually just dial out from the Microsoft Teams app and make a call straight through your computer.
Absolutely, yep.
Amazing. So I wanted to ask you, David, if I bring Teams into my business, how is it going to change the way I work? What do I need to think about to make them get the most out of Teams?
I think the first thing that we look at is the individual tools that you're currently using, and then we look to implement those through Teams. So effectively, you're using a single pane of glass. There are lots of features that we can bring into Teams. So obviously, we've got the conferencing, we've got the telephony, and then we've got all of the productivity sides of it. So sharing of documents and saving documents into SharePoint. So there's an initial requirements gathering, so we really understand all the individual elements, so that when we roll out Teams, we do it in such a way that we've covered all of that, and we wrap a little bit of governance around that as well. And I think that's really important. So there are certain things we can do in terms of compliance, because just giving people Teams and free reins to use the application can be quite dangerous. So it's careful to consider all the different elements.
What's the most dangerous thing you can do in Teams?
Well, I guess if people are adopting it and just uploading documents into Teams and sharing it, you're effectively, especially given the current climate, giving people the opportunity to download documents onto personal devices. So that's a massive problem for data leakage. And I guess that brings me in quite nicely into, I'm going to spoil Harry's top tip. And if he could talk for just a few minutes around compliance, and this is something very real that we're experiencing now with one of our clients, and we're looking at how to tie this up.
Sure. I mean, so yeah, as David said, with Teams, you've got the ability to share files, to download data. And that means that if you're on a personal device, if you're on a laptop at home or a mobile at home, you're going to be downloading corporate data, which is a big risk to a lot of our clients. And because SharePoint's on the back end of this, there's a lot you can do in terms of compliance. And one of the biggest things you can roll out is something called Conditional Access. And what that means is you can restrict logging into Teams to only work if you meet certain criteria. So for example, you have to use multi-factor authentication. You have to approve your login using your mobile device to prove that you are logging in. Or you have to log in from a certain network to prove, again, to prove security. What we've done internally is we've enforced that the requirement to have a domain joined device. So only corporate devices can actually log into Teams and download data and experience everything. There's also a setting that you can go, there's a middle ground where users, you can use Teams, but you can't download anything. So you can open Teams on the browser or use the app and you can participate, but as soon as you hit download, it just won't work. So that works quite well when you have got people working remotely on personal devices, but you don't want them to be able to take that corporate data away.
One of the things I noticed when we were preparing for this webinar and the last one was you were able to join my agency's Teams instance with yours in some way, and you could share like the PowerPoint for today. And I couldn't download that, but I could access it. But I can't access your accounts, for example, some other thing that is going on in Chalkline. How is that possible? And talk to me a little bit about this bridging between organisations and how you control that.
So, I mean, it's a good point. So with Teams, you have got external federation, which means that you can bring in other people with their Office 365 account. So you don't have to give them, you haven't had to have a Chalkline account. We've used your account just fine. But because we have the conditional access policies that are applied to our environment, they've also kicked in for you as well. And it could be that we set exclusions so that maybe it wouldn't apply to you, or maybe it's a bit more relaxed, or maybe it's stricter, depending on what the requirement would be. But we're able to do that for anything within our tenant for any external users as well.
Amazing. And I can't help noticing both of you have got very natty headphones on with a little light at the end of your microphone. Is it my imagination, or is that like going on and off, but depending on whether you're on a call?
That's the Jabra Busy light.
Jabra Busy light, but it's on your headset.
Yep, that's right. So, yeah. So when we're walking around the office, everyone can. Well, one day when we're walking around the office, people are going to be able to see, kind of if we're on a call or what's going on at the time.
So just to expand on that slightly, so presence is obviously something that's prevalent within Teams. We take that a little step further, so we've also got busy lights on all of our monitors, which is a small little light which replicates the presence, and you can see who's on the call. It'll show it's red or green, I'm available, and that mimics the presence from within Teams, and that's incredibly useful if you're looking across your floor and you can see who to pass a call to. And there was quite an interesting blog from Mark Deacon from Microsoft, who we're very close with, and is hopefully joining us in the coming weeks. And he's turned his entire lounge with the use of hue bulbs into replicate this presence. So you can take it to the nth degree, but it's really interesting, and it allows you to sort of, I can go into Teams, I can look and see who's available, who I can pass a call to. You can use the consult button, so I can click on someone, I can start messaging to them and then pass the call to them. So, the guesswork of who should I pass this call to just it evaporates, because you can see who's available and who you can pass a call easily to.
And Harry, just before we started, we were talking about single sign-on, and this struck me as something that, well, it appeals to me because I've got 1 million authentications on my Google Authenticator. Can you tell us a little bit about single sign-on and how that interrelates with Teams?
Sure. So because Teams is in the Microsoft 365 stack, out of the box, you log in with your Microsoft account, or your organizational account rather. So it's the same account a lot of our clients will use for their email. It's the same account they're using to get into SharePoint. And usually the same account they use to log into their computer altogether. We've got some clients who are using things like Zoom and Slack and Box and tools like that, and they're all great tools. But the problem is they've now got a different password for every single tool that they've got to remember. If someone leaves, we've got to quickly lock them out of all of them at the same time. And if they have MFA, they're going to need so many authenticator apps that they end up only using 1 or 2 of them. You can get, with the enterprise version of these apps, you can have single sign-on as well, but Teams has that natively, and you haven't got to pay any more to have that benefit.
So, I mean, if in my situation, for example, I've got a voice over internet phone system, I've got Slack chat, I've got Microsoft Office 365, I've got Dropbox, and you can actually bring all of that into Microsoft 365 and into Teams and plug in Wavenet for the telephony, and you've got everything in one thing, and you log in once and you're into all of it.
Exactly right. And you know, we've had situations that we've had to let someone go quickly, or a new starter's coming quite quickly, whatever it might be, and we go into our Active Directory, we click a button, and you know, that will propagate, and that's it. We haven't got to panic and go, oh, you know, someone forgot to disable the Dropbox login. And again, you can have that with Dropbox as well, and we do have that integration with for quite a lot of our clients, but it's native within Teams.
Fantastic. So as we approach the end of the half-hour slot, we're a little bit overrun for a few minutes. I'm going to ask each of you for your #1 top Teams tip. And Mike, I'm going to start with you. What's your top tip for Teams?
I think for me, it's just, I guess, if it's relevant to your sort of position and stuff, and that is to open things up to the external community. I mean, I've seen huge benefits of, you know, adding external parties into my Teams environment, because the collaboration that I then have, you know, it just brings my network closer and far more efficient, you know, because as I mentioned before, my job is to look after, you know, all various different types of channel partners like Chalkline. I can communicate with all those guys via Teams, and what I can find is that it's just far more productive. So my tip would be expand it to the external community.
Fantastic. And David, what's your top tip?
I'm going to go with the search function in Teams, which I just think is incredibly powerful. So, you know, it doesn't matter what channel you're in, what team you're in, and, you know, we've got numerous channels and teams set up. A quick search of a keyword or an invoice number or whatever that might be it's such a powerful tool, and then it just surfaces the relevant information to you. So that's my top tip.
Amazing. And Harry, I've given you the maximum amount of time because David stole your thunder. What's your new top tip?
Yep, I had to come up with one quickly. I mean, so one of the greatest things that they now have on the mobile app is quiet hours. And, you know, we're using Teams thoroughly internally for internal chat. And that means that I'm getting probably a message every 10 seconds at peak times. You know, it can drive me mad. And if I'm off or at night, it's something that I don't necessarily want to get. And you can set on your phone that I don't want to be told between, I don't know, 6 p.m. and 12 a.m. I don't want any notifications. Or if I'm off, I might set the quiet hours to cover the whole day. You can also set it to for your phone to not notify you if you're active on another device. So if I'm using my computer at the moment, my phone's not going to go off at all. But if I leave the office and turn my computer off, I'll start getting them through. So the notification settings are they're pretty helpful.
Well, thank you. Those are great tips, and I'm feeling a little bit chagrined about not using Teams more. But thank you very much, Harry, David, Mike. That was a very interesting session. Join us again in a couple of weeks for the next Chalkline webinar. But for now, thank you very much and goodbye.